Okay, let's look at the decisive game, game 8. They have just scored 3.5 each against each other, Nigel Short and Kasparov. So Kasparov made a very determined effort. I'm sure Nigel Short would have made a very determined effort as well. So what opening is set by this game? E4 from Nigel Short. Kasparov responds not with the Sicilian but with E5. And we go into bishop c4 line. Two knights defense, and now knight g5, very exciting stuff. So black gambits a pawn with d5 to play knight a5. This is the bishop b5 check line, so it's a real gambit now. Pawn definitely down for black. So what is black's compensation here? Nigel plays bishop d3 here, and I remember in a magazine Nigel Short against Hebden, he played queen f3, very interesting move. A bit of prepared, computer preparation, I think, for that game, and he won nicely. But in this game, he chose for some reason bishop d3, and now actually quite a seemingly logical maneuver that black wants to create even more dynamism and fracture white's pawn structure. So the bishop on d3, you might think, looks a bit odd, and in fact it is a bit odd, and it's actually exploited now by Kasparov very directly with this next move, knight d5. So he's unveiling an attack on the g5 knight. So any thoughts of queen f3 like in the Hebden game have now gone. We're on a different path of the maze completely. The knight now retreats, attacking e5. Okay, so bishop d6, protecting the e5 pawn. White's now castles. And now Kasparov just goes for the bishop on d3. He plays knight f4. Okay, and he's going to fracture white's pawn structure. After rook e1, he damages white's pawn structure and offers the e5 pawn now. He just castles. Very interesting stuff. So black, already a pawn down, is like making it a two-pawn gambit now. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but these two pawns are doubled. Can he get a bind on the d4 square? Look at this bishop. It's a bit miserable at the moment. Blocked in by the d pawn, which is blocked by the d3 pawn. So blocked by the d2, and d3 inhibits that. So here actually, Nigel decided not to go to win another pawn. Now if he did try and win e5, stored variation from earlier, rook not bishop takes e5. That would be much better for white, getting that dance square bishop. But instead, to play rook e8, provoking d4. After f6, f6, knight g4, knight e5 to f3, bishop g4. And this is difficult for white to play this position. There's a threat now, bishop takes f3. These pieces are just not connected. The rooks are far from being connected here. So for example, if d3, bishop takes f3, creating two sets of double pawns. So even though black's two pawns down, it's a great game. It looks like a great game, but engines still prefer white. But I wouldn't like to play white here. It looks as though it's very dicey, literally very dicey with these pawns, very dicey. So but here apparently white might be able to sort of hold the position. This knight's offside. It's not that clear cut. We've got an offside knight here. White's king is quite safe actually, and maybe even the g file could potentially be used. So it's not that clear cut to evaluate. It's actually very difficult to evaluate that position. White has the material advantage. Maybe Nigel should have gone in for it. Instead, so he plays knight c3, and now rook e8, defending that pawn. So black's only a pawn down, and now creates a nice bind actually on c5. And I really like, personally, this move and the position. The bind it represents kind of Maroczy bind, but also the knight can hover from the edge to the center now, which is great as well. And also d3 is targetable. It's a fixed target. There's definitely restrained blockade destroy element of this, that this d3 is now restrained for potential for bishop a6s. It's going to be very hard and painful to defend d3, surely one would expect. So bishop a6, and black has got a lot of pressure here for the pawn. Nigel tries to counter-attack on the c5 pawn, so he gives up d3. After knight e4 he's got pressure on c5, but Kasparov gives up his bishop pair actually to be able to play now the very nice looking f5 and e4. So now e4 driving the knight back, and now the knight comes back into the centre. So black seems to have quite a beautiful position. Okay, the only downside is this c5 pawn, but now Kasparov very energetically plays knight e5, offering up his c5 pawn. So great energy from black. If bishop takes c5 here, then knight d3 is good. Just winning the exchange if that's a problem. Okay, so if bishop takes d6, knight takes c1. Okay, so that pawn cannot be taken. Instead, Nigel plays d4. Now we get this lovely knight d3 in anyway, just sacking a pawn here. So still carrying on, dynamic, energetic, aggressive play, trademarks of Kasparov. D takes c5, and now bishop f4, driving the rook away for sure. So rook c2, and now a really great move highlighting black's trump cards. e3, fantastic pawn wedge in the centre, very dangerous passed pawn. So the rook has to guard e2 now. And now we see bishop g3, which makes way potentially for a knight coming to f4 and then e2. Numerous threats. This knight's really passive here, but it goes to f1, which allows bishop f2 check. After king h1, now the knight uses that juicy f4 square, and even invites the exchange of queens, because look, the knight's supporting the menacing e2, so the queens come off. White's under great pressure, but look, he's sacrificed the whole knight. Does it matter? Nigel takes the knight, is temporarily a piece up, but now rook d1. Okay, rook e2, offering, he has to offer that knight back, but he's hoping to still have some play. But here, instead of just taking the knight routinely, Kasparov threatens actually to mate white instead. He plays actually bishop g3, not only hitting the rook but threatening to mate. So he's winning, instead of winning the knight, he's actually winning a rook. So here he's the exchange up. Two rooks and bishop versus rook, knight, bishop. Black is now the exchange up after that operation. g4, and now the rooks intensify, or try and intensify the pressure. So the other rook comes to d8 now. So if black can double rooks on f1, that's really the end of the game. So bishop b4, the rook comes to attack the bishop. Bishop goes to a5. If it had gone to c3, it's really much the same. Basically this rook c1 or rook somewhere, if the other ones come in, is going to spell the end of the game for white. There's just too much pressure on that first rank, too much congestion. So in the game, Nigel played bishop a5, and now rook d5, threatening simply to win the pawn en route to c1. Bishop b4 defending the pawn, but now a5. So does the bishop really want to go back to a3 rather passively? Well, Nigel actually takes on a5 here. I think his position's lost now anyway. So rook takes c5. Rook comes to join in the attack on the first rank. Nigel's lost this now. It spells the end of the match. It's the last game, decisive game of the match. He's a rook down. End of game. After rook d3, f4. Here a mating net's been sewn around his king as well. You know, with things like well, rook e2 is threatening immediate mate. So here Nigel Short resigned. So nostalgic really, because they played great entertaining blitz matches for TV in the past. There was one in the Docklands at the Hippodrome, which a lot is on YouTube. I urge you to check that out. Very exciting 30-minute chess in their old matches. And of course they played in the PCA World Championship match. Very exciting Sicilian defence games, which maybe I should cover sometime. But here, you know, very exciting opening choice here as well. So this line showing that black can generate a lot of counterplay here after bishop d3 with this manoeuvre knight d5 to f4. So very directly attacking white's awkward looking, you know, d3 bishop. to give white a crippled, a doubled pawn structure. I hesitate to use. It's not very PC to use the word crippled nowadays. Sorry about that. Sorry, double pawn structure. So b3 bishop a6, attacking d3, and now white gets a counter attack on c5. Okay, so he gives up d3, his own sort of positional sack, but black's still got the edge here. You know, he's driving the white pieces back. He's getting his knight from the rim to be less dim towards the centre. He's offering c5. It can't really be taken here, but now he's really offering it up for a fantastic position now. I think there's a nuance here actually that, or is there? No. Could if black had taken there, I think he'd be in trouble. Let's just very briefly check that. If knight takes c1, still black's better off to queen c1, bishop e5, or bishop takes h2 even. Okay, so black was better all the way, even these sidelines. But this is a great sideline, sacking that pawn. This is a great main variation rather, to get this very dangerous e3 pawn. And now there's a very neat, knight sack. So knight f4, just basically offering the exchange of queens and a piece to get onto that first row, to be able to now threaten like mate very shortly. So after rook e2, now threatening mate. So basically winning the exchange. If black, if white took on f5, then e2 wins that rook anyway. He doesn't have to take on f1 here. He can play e2. So it looks terrible. So black was heading to get the material back with interest there after all that pressure. And now he just has to coordinate rooks on that first rank, which he does so expertly. So once that happens, now just black's trivially winning. After f4, he's actually sealing a mating net in a lot of variations. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this Blitz match. I might create a playlist, or maybe some of you can create a playlist for these 8 videos, this set of 8 videos. And share these videos around with your friends. That's great stuff to see these two players play a Blitz match, and it's a great way for Kasparov to promote the game. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.